How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new to ToastyDIY, my name is Jonah. I am the videographer for ToastyBros, and I also work at ToastyBros, and I do custom PC builds, website listings, and all the things like that. So a few days ago, I asked you guys in the community tab what questions you had for me for Q&A video. I did a Q&A video a couple months ago, and you all seem to like it pretty good, so we are back at it again with another Q&A video. This time, you guys gave me about 10 questions to answer, so I'm gonna go through them pretty quickly for you guys, and we're gonna get straight to it. So starting off with Cade Games' question, he asked me how to make a profit on selling PCs. Now, for the short answer, I'm gonna recommend you not sell PCs because overall it is really hard to sell PCs for profit specifically. If you're selling, you're probably gonna be selling on Facebook, eBay, or Java, and most of the time you're either gonna have low ballers on Facebook, you're gonna have fees on Java and eBay, so it's gonna really cut into your profit margin, and you're not gonna be able to make much money in terms of the amount of time you actually put into these PCs that you're flipping. So overall, there's many other ways you can make money faster, but if you want to flip the PCs just because you like building PCs and you just want to have fun time building it, you maybe want to get better at building, it is a pretty easy way to do so. The main things you want to do are buy a couple used parts like GPU. Sometimes you can get renewed motherboards on Amazon because they have return policies. Use CPUs, and also make sure you start off on the lower end and then you kind of build your way up, and then you might be able to experiment with those higher end builds and maybe turn more of a profit margin. But overall, start off cheap, use NVIDIA GPUs, and buy some used parts if you can, and just kind of go for it. And if you make some money, you make some money. Question number 2 comes from Uber Pigeon, and they asked me, what is a typical day like at PC Bros and Toasty Bros, and what happens in the background that not many people think of? So me, McAllister, and Zach, those are our 3 employees minus Matt and Jackson that are on the front of the camera all the time. We get here at 10 o'clock every single day. We work till 3 o'clock p.m., and then we work those hours Monday through Friday. We're off on the weekends, and then Matt and Jackson get here around 1 to 2 hours early, sometimes even 3 hours early, because they have a lot of things to do in the background, like emails and setting things up for the stream and just doing small things, getting ahead of schedule. So behind the scenes, Matt and Jackson get here much earlier than you might think, and they usually work on small things around the office, emails, ad spots, brand deals, things like that do take time in setting up to do. So that's kind of what happens outside of our normal work hours. But then once the 9 o'clock starts, you all see the 1 hour stream. By the time the stream is over, then we'll kind of come in and do our normal day of filming. We'll do, depending on what the week is, it really fluctuates all the time. Outside of the office, sometimes I'm in here on Saturdays doing some extra things around the office that need help. But yeah, since we post so many videos every single week, it's very important to have a nice structured schedule so we can follow it and make sure we're on time for posting our videos every single day. All right, Kermit asked me 2 questions actually, so we're gonna be going right into those. He said, what order of operation is best practice for PC building? What PC parts to set up first and put them into the PC and like put everything together? So I've seen a couple ways. Now the way that we do it here, we basically do CPU, motherboard, RAM, storage, and cooler. Those 5 components are all put together and assembled, and then we also have the PC having the power supply inserted into the case. And once those 2 things are set up, most of the time the motherboard with all the stuff is going to be going into the case, and then with the power supply already in it, and then everything just kind of gets plugged in and assembled that way. Other times I'll see some people doing CPU, motherboard, RAM, storage, no cooler, and then they install the motherboard setup into the case, and then they also install the power supply and then cooler. With it being in the case already, sometimes it's kind of hard to install certain coolers, so I personally think it's easier to install the cooler onto the motherboard first and then installing it into the case. Next question from Kermit is when and who should get an AIO? So people that should get an AIO, honestly, I think are, so definitely people who have a higher end CPU and are a little more worried about having those higher temps in their system, or 2, people that care about aesthetics. So personally, I think an AIO just looks way cooler than an air cooler, especially those beefy tower coolers. For some reason, I just cannot get behind it. I've never liked how they look, and I think spending the extra like 20, 30, 40 bucks at times, getting like a nice budget cooler, or just even spending an extra 50, 60 bucks and getting a nice cooler with like a display on it, I think it's personally worth it for me. If you're looking for max price to performance, I think you should stick with an air cooler or like a stock cooler, and then you can always upgrade down the road, because a tower cooler or an AIO upgrade is very easy and very doable. Actually, my first PC build ever, I had a Cooler Master Hyper 212 ARGB cooler, and then I switched up to a Corsair H100i AIO. So to summarize that question, budget people, you want to save as much money as possible, just go for an air cooler. They're cheap. If you want to spend a little extra money, have a nice aesthetically pleasing build, I say go AIO. All right, 97 Buckeye guy asked me, what are some good and inexpensive options for CPU cooler for an AMD Ryzen 7 9700X? I would like both air and water cooled options if possible, please and thank you. So I'm gonna pull my phone here. I'm gonna give you guys some of my recommendations that I think are great for the money. First of all, we have the Arctic Liquid Freezer 3. You can get this in a 240 mil or 360 mil radiator conversion. It's gonna be like the absolute best cooling performance in terms of AIOs. If you really want to keep that 9700X very nice and chilly, Arctic Liquid Freezer 3 is nice, but just keep in mind it is a large cooler. The radiator is really thick, so make sure that you have a nice case that can adequately fit those thick, large radiators, because Arctic does make some pretty beefy coolers. If you wanted to go through a different brand, you could also go through the V-True V5 or the ID Cooling Frozen A410. I think it's a really nice looking tower cooler. And if you're wanting something a little more beefy in terms of higher end tower cooling performance for the 9700X, you want to make sure those temperatures are nice in terms of air cooling, I would recommend the Thermalright Peerless Assassin coolers, the one with the 2 fans on it. It's more like a Noctua kind of rip-off, clone if you will, and those do a really good job at cooling pretty much any CPU on the market. Other AIOs that I do like that I'm gonna mention is gonna be the NZXT Kraken 240. It's definitely more on the aesthetic side of it. If you want to just have something that's going to adequately cool that 9700X, that has the GIF and everything like that, that's the one that I use at home. And then if you are also looking for more on the budget side, I think Thermalright AIOs are just fine. Gamers with Nexus has done plenty of reviews on those Thermalright AIOs, and they do perform quite well. So a really good option if you're not trying to spend any more than like 70 bucks. And I've been using the Frozen Infinity 240 and 360 recently, and they look really sweet. And MDS asked me, after the PC build, how does the builder install a working Windows key for the unknown buyer? So if you don't understand that, basically whenever you are gonna be building a PC for someone and you wanna have Windows activated and installed before they receive the PC, so there's 2 ways to do this. You can go through the entire process of signing into Windows and doing all that Microsoft stuff and then going in and activating it. And then after that piece is activated, then you can reset the PC and you'll still go back to that like opening screen. Or one way it's way easier to do is right when you install Windows from a fresh USB, you do Control-Shift-F3 and that'll go into administrator mode, and then you can kind of set up the PC beforehand, get drivers installed, activate Windows, do updates, stress test the PC, and then whenever you shut that down, it'll go back to like the out-of-box experience splash screen, so you don't have to worry about restarting the PC and doing all that stuff. It'll just sign in, and then whenever they're signed in through that Microsoft stuff, it'll have everything you need there. All right, so next question. Computer Guy asked me, why are people always upgrading their hardware when what they had was more than enough? Honestly, I think this is just a person-to-person scenario, but I think the acquisition of new hardware is very important to a lot of PC enthusiasts. And honestly, I will say, being in the tech space and having built 2 PCs for myself now, the biggest problem that I think a lot of people think, especially if you're in the space and you follow all tech news and stuff like that, it makes it feel like the tech that you have on your last PC whenever new hardware comes out is almost like irrelevant now because it's so much better than the last generation most of the time. So it's kind of hard. I think the best thing you have to do is just not compare what you have to the newest and greatest stuff. You have to kind of take a look at what it does for you and your scenario, because a lot of the time, most people's PCs, even under like the $1,500 price point, works for them 95% of the time. There's only like a 5% time where your hardware is not going to keep up with the games that you want to play. So I think honestly, just don't compare it to what's coming out new. Just take a look at what it does for you specifically, and if you actually do need more, then you can upgrade. But most of the time, people won't need to. All right, and the last question I have for you all today is from Neko, I think, and he asked me a pretty big question, so we're gonna read through it together. He said, there are a ton of videos out there for building PC guides, but for certain budgets, I think DIY is the way to go, which I do agree. Unfortunately, a lot of people are afraid to build, but as most of us know, it's actually quite easy. Could you perhaps go over some misconceptions and reassuring things about building? So basically, to sum this up, Neko believes that certain budgets, DIY is the way to go. I fully agree. So I think anything under the $1,000 price point, I think it's very important to build your own PC. Now again, if you cannot afford to do that, that's totally okay. There are places out there that have some pretty good office upgrade PCs, like ToastyBros' new sleeper PC has a 3050 60 gig and an upgraded office PC, and that thing does pretty good in 1080p for under 500 bucks. That is a good option. But if you don't want to go with the pre-built route and you do want to stick with that building your own PC thing, there's plenty of guides out there. If you wanted to maybe start off, I'd recommend doing like an office PC upgrade, because you can just plop in a GPU. It's super straightforward. You don't have to do any kind of like case assembly, power supply installation, like a P510 Lenovo. They are a big tower, but it is so easy to build on. You literally just open the case, plop the GPU in, and you're done. Misconceptions though. I think a lot of people think that the plugging of cables is very, very hard and it's confusing. And I mean, sometimes it can be, depending on what you're doing. But for budget systems, I think a lot of people don't realize how much more simple budget PC builds are compared to high-end builds. For high-end builds, there's so many things to plug in and do, and obviously there's more compatibility issues, and overall, I've seen high-end builds take double, if not triple the time sometimes of a budget system. When you have a budget system, there's hardly anything to do in terms of plugging certain things in, installing certain things. It's very streamlined and easy to do when it comes to building a budget PC. So just remember that if you want to start off, you don't want to go anything too crazy, go for a budget system with less complicated parts like an AIO, go for a tower cooler, go for, things that you know are gonna work and things that are really easy to build in. There are so many guides on YouTube as well when it comes to installing Windows, installing drivers. I did a video myself of one. There's a lot of resources online, step-by-step build guides, things like that can help you build your first PC. And I promise you, it's much more simple than you think. If you watch a couple videos, you'll have a pretty good idea as to what you're doing. And it's just like Legos, honestly. It's pretty easy. But I think that's going to wrap up this video today on the Q&A. I think I got to all the questions you guys asked, and thank you for asking them. I do appreciate it, and hope you learned something from these questions today and answers. If you do have any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them in the comments down below. But thanks again for watching to the end if you all did, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.